Well, we have just had a very successful override vote in the United States Senate by a vote of 82-13. Senators voted to override the president's veto. So now 14 of the 15 sections of the Farm Bill are law, overriding the president's veto because of the results of the vote in the House and, of course, this overwhelming bipartisan vote in the Senate. I think we can all be proud of that. It's a triumph really for not only rural America, but really for the country, because this bill is much more than a farm bill. It's a food bill. It is an energy bill. It's also conservation legislation. And it's now all except the trade title are the law of the land. Yes, unfortunately, in the enrolling process in the House, clerk there made a mistake. And it's unfortunate that the bill that was sent to the president had only 14 of the 15 titles. So now the attempt will be made to redo the bill with all of the titles. But while we're waiting that to happen, 14 of the 15 are in full force and effect, are the law of the land. And these are really the critical titles. The one that was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor over in the House is the trade title. It's in dollar terms a very small part of the overall bill, but nonetheless important, and it will be dealt with upon our return. Yes, they're getting the same farm bill we'd passed earlier. It is outstanding for North Dakota. This is a bill that has permanent disaster legislation. That's now the law of the land. It has these energy provisions that will reduce our dependence on foreign oil. It has the expansion of the nutrition programs, including $1 billion for a lunch program, snack program in our schools so our kids eat in a more healthy way, a dramatic expansion of conservation efforts and a reform of them so that it's much more user-friendly in our part of the country. And in addition to that, substantial reform. For the first time, income limits that are dramatically lower than what used to be, and of course, with respect to farmers, the most significant reform we've seen in any legislation since the original 49 Act. So it's not everything everyone would have liked to have seen, but it is, I think, an extraordinarily good bill, a good product. That's why it got 82 votes today in the United States Senate, even in the face of a presidential veto. Not only do we have the lowest cost food in the history of the world as a share of our income, we also have the safest supply, the most stable supply, the most abundant supply. Something is working. This bill is paid for. It's paid for without a tax increase. The professional scoring of this legislation is that it is $10 billion over baseline, completely paid for without a tax increase. The disaster assistance in this bill is budgeted and paid for. In the last 3 years, every state in the nation has received disaster payments. Every state. None of it budgeted for, none of it paid for. These disaster provisions are budgeted and paid for. I wish the Washington Post, when they write their editorials, would bother to read the legislation they're critiquing, because clearly they don't know what they're writing about.